today.
You do, man. The hair is working.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jordan Gillman.
And I am Michael Tyler.
It's great to be here with all of you today. It's the first day of Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. So sitting with two men talking about men's mental health and our children's book, Mirror Face, and how we're looking to support that message of self-love in really everyone. But being that it's Mental Health Awareness Month, we're going to use this opportunity to talk about our own personal experiences as it relates to mental health and talk to you about some tools which we've found throughout our lives to help support our own individual mental health, and how we came together to create a book on the subject of self-love, which is effectively as important of a tool for mental health and maintaining a positive relationship with yourself. So before I begin, and Michael, I want to let you introduce yourself too.
Being Michael Tyler, I'm also the author of a book called The Skin You Live In, which is how Jordan and I sort of came together through a mutual friend. He read that book, I read his book, and we decided that we had to do a book. But with respect to the mental health, a couple of points I want to bring up right away as we're focusing on the mental health of men in this month, is that there's a stigma associated with mental health issues that's even more so for men. And I would like to throw this model out there for people to sort of operate with while they're listening to us today. That every individual in the world is a composite of 5 selves. Think about that. So you have a physical being, a mental being, an emotional being, psychological being, and a spiritual being. And we understand the practices and protocols for maintaining health for our physical being. The same thing applies with respect to the category and level of health you have for all of your other beings. And when they're all operating at an optimum level, then you can have what truly is the well-being. It's an issue of how do we raise consciousness and awareness that all the beings that form who we are need to have attention for health. And no one gets stigmatized for pursuing physical health or physical fitness or nutrients or sustenance for their physical being. The same is true for your mental, emotional, psychological, and spiritual being. So if you can operate with that model while you're listening to Jordan and I today, maybe you can begin to figure out how to destigmatize the mental health issues for yourself if you have them, or if you have had them for other people. That's just one thing I'd like to say from the start.
And I'll just chime in from there, and it connects well to Michael's point. So I connected with Michael Tyler mainly being that I was now 36 years old and Michael's a few years older. And I was searching for mentorship. I was going through my own journey of self-discovery and self-exploration. To be honest, I had a really bad relationship with myself. I'd say my mental health was a work in progress. I was someone who had achieved a lot professionally, but lacked love for who I was from the inside out. I didn't go deep with myself to really see what potentially other people saw in me, which is love, light, happiness. I was more so on the self-conscious side of things, where I was constantly consumed whether I would be received by the world, would they like me, would they not like me, would they think I sound smart, would they think I'm kind, and I would obsess with other people liking me. And the question was, did I like myself? As I started deep, Michael mentioned, it was not something that I was able to talk about with my friends and really anyone. I had done some personal development conferences and read a lot of books, but for me, the work was personal, and ultimately I felt like there weren't a lot of men that I can talk to on the subject. So I was having this discussion with a friend of mine, and she had suggested I connect with Michael Tyler. We didn't know why we were meeting until the moment that we had met. And I think first things first, Michael Tyler has some years on me. So he was able to be just a guide, a mentor, someone who can be a sounding board for something that he can with, which is self-love and the relationship that we have with ourselves. I opened up to him about my own personal journey, of my own realization that there are multiple aspects of myself, most of which I had yet to start a relationship with. And this was at the age of 33 years old. So it was quite daunting to have this realization at that moment and to vulnerably express that with Michael Tyler. I think we all connected was that there's a universal need for this, specifically among men, but really for everyone, to have the discussion of who we are, that the feelings that we have, and normalize discussions, knowing from those discussions can spiral so much amazingness. And until we have the discussions, we're never able to fully work on our. So Michael and I wanted to create a children's book, Mirror Face, with a message that I wish I learned as a kid, which was something that goes to the comment of self-consciousness. I was looking in the mirror, searching for other people's acceptance of me when I didn't fully accept myself. And ultimately, my mirror face, the face that I made in front of the mirror, were filled with self-doubt. We're filled with questions and ultimately limiting beliefs that were holding me back, were diminishing were pushing me down. When in the world, I want to light myself, and the conversations that I have with myself in the mirror ultimately were fueling self-confidence. They were in fact self-doubt and fear and anxiety, and a lot of things ultimately were hurting me from the inside. So after expressing that to Michael Tyler, we knew that we were onto something, being that he had in 2005 written a book about self-acceptance. There is this need to go deeper on the subject of self and really tackle the subject of love. So how to love yourself and what that actually means. So we can get into a bit about what that means, but Michael, this might be a good time for us to actually read before I the book together and to share the message of Mirror Face, because I think it will give others that opportunity to say, what are we really talking about here?
I think you're absolutely right. It's a good time to do that. Just before we do that, Jordan hinted at what does self-love really mean? And so I just want to put this in the minds of those who may be listening. So when they hear what we say in this book, understand how it applies to themselves and how it can apply to the child. Look at the two words that make up the term self-love. Self means individual, means you. Love, as I define it, is the ultimate measure of value. And it's an emotion that registers the ultimate measure of value. You apply that word for something that you feel an ultimate measure of value for. And those things that you do feel an ultimate measure of value for, you would do three things on behalf. One is you will protect them. The other is you will promote them. And the third is you will preserve them. So think about applying those three words to yourself, that you will protect, promote, and preserve who you are. If you operate with an understanding of love being that, and you show that to the world, and you bestow it on those around you, then that well-being sensibility of how do we always protect, promote, and preserve one another becomes the world that we live in. So having said that, let's get on with the book.
So while we take a few seconds to pull it up, Michael, if you want to, so mention this is the book. You'll see as we go through the book, how the pictures illuminate, and it's a beautiful aesthetic that our illustrator Lisa Fields helped create. On the cover, you'll see Michael Tyler, Mini Mike in the middle, and I'm Mini Jordan, or Jordy, as my mom likes to say, on the left. A big part of me in this project is healing my inner child and reconnecting with the part of my hurt child that still feels unloved at times. And this book has really explored that and really forged a relationship with that part of me that needed some love. So we wanted to reflect ourselves within the story. It is very personal. And before we dive in, Michael, why don't you take a second to read everyone the front flap that isn't featured here?
I will do that. This will give you the mental setup to receive the book. It can be so much fun to look in the mirror and smile and laugh at the faces you make, or stretch and yawn as your eyes become clearer when you open them wide right after you wake. But there's more you can do in front of a mirror. You can say what you think and say how you feel. Because the you that you see in front of a mirror is the you who is true and the you who is real.
So now, without further ado, we bring you Mirror Face. Sometimes I stand in front of a mirror and make funny faces, or just look and stare. But every time I look in a mirror, there are thoughts that I think that I'd like to share. Wherever I go, whoever I see, I wonder what people are thinking of me. They see my height, my shape, my size. They see my nose, my skin, my eyes. They see the color of my hair. They see the kind of clothes I wear. The me I am, the me I will be, is sometimes thinking of me. I walk in many places and look around at many faces. Do people think I'm smart and kind? And do they like the me they find? Once I stood in front of the mirror, asking these questions I ask about me, and the me looking back at me from the mirror gave me the answers that helped me to see.
There's nothing to fear. I've nothing to hide. The me that I am is the you that's inside. So don't you worry how others see you.
Hey, Michael, we just lost you on sound for a second. So let me just cue that. See if we can get you some sound.
Okay, I still hear myself. Hopefully,
I can hear you now.
You can hear me now? Okay,
Yep.
Everyone's still hearing me. I got the okay from Kamara, and the audience is still waiting. So I'll go back to that part. There's nothing to fear. I've nothing to hide. The me that I am is the you that's inside. So don't you worry how others see you. You know who you are, and I know you too. You laugh like I laugh. I smile like you do. We think the same thoughts. You're me, and I'm you. We have the same hope. We see the same dream. When we are together, you're more than you seem.
You're always there?
We're never apart.
But when I can't see you?
Just look in your heart. I hold a mirror inside of your chest. It will always show you're you at your best.
The best that I am is inside my heart?
To know who you are, that's where you must start.
And can I become all I dream to be?
I know that you can. Trust me, you'll see. The reason I'm sure, look at us, you'll agree. It's the best of good reasons, I guarantee. Your eyes can see what nobody knows. You're more than your skin and your size and your clothes. For the you who is true, search your heart and you'll see that my wonderful you is your fantastic me.
Now, when I stand and look in a mirror, I remember the words from my mirror face. The me in my heart is the me at my best. I'll live by these words everywhere, every place. I
love
love
you.
you, mirror face. So there it is.
That's the book that we put together to deliver this message of self-love to children. But as Jordan said, he wrote it from the perspective of how does he reach the child who's in him, where the doubts first began. You still have to go back to that level. And so we believe that this book, when adults hear it, even when they're reading it to children, will give them a moment to take a bit of a self-audit and entertain or speculate how the message of that book is actually still playing out in their own lives. So we invite you to do that when you consider this.
And the story about me looking in the mirror and the beginning that starts off, sometimes I look in front of the mirror and make funny faces or just look and stare. But every time I look in the mirror, there are thoughts that I think that I'd like to share. So the thoughts that I was having to myself in front of the mirror and the questions that I asked, I think at a young age, I didn't realize that I can control the narrative with myself. So with meeting Michael Tyler and the way we connected, we immediately realized that I wasn't the only one with this particular challenge, and that the idea was, can you train yourself to speak positively to yourself? Can you control the inner dialogue that you have with yourself? And can you teach that message to a child? For me, it was as simple as when I used to look in front of the mirror and being self-critical to myself and realizing that no part of that exercise is positive. No, nothing about that instilled confidence in me. And the question is, if I have a choice, and if my mom or dad told me that I could have looked in the mirror and said, "I love you, mirror face," I think it's a vehicle, it's a tool, it's a way for which we can start to learn how to talk to ourselves positively and start to understand that the narrative that we have, the inner narrative that we have with ourselves, is the most important narrative to have. So the self-love, or the perception of it, of what it means for me and Michael, is that it's the realization that you're accepting, you're loving, you're appreciating that inner you for all that you are. And it is, I think it's not a false sense of, it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel upset, but ultimately the mirror is a tool. And as you can see from the title of this exercise, it can be a tool to teach self-love through the mirror by utilizing it. Someone in the comments had mentioned affirmations. Affirmations is a tremendous vehicle, and it's something that we included within the last sentence. "I love you, mirror face" is an affirmation, because to be honest, that's the hardest thing for me to do, is look in the mirror and say I love you, from the years of tormenting myself and not being that kind. And so now we're on this mission to really initiate this dialogue with youngsters, parents, really everyone, to make your mirror face more conscious, more aware. When you get in front of the mirror, get ready to pump yourself up. As Michael and I like to do, we call it the mirror face shake. We shake it out before we get in front of the mirror, and we come out with all of our energy, with all of our light, because we need to bring that energy to the rest of the world. And it starts with that conversation that we have with ourselves.
And I would add to the practice of self-affirmations, which I agree with Laura, who made a comment that they're fantastic to have. We need to have them, Lori. I would also add this for people to consider. Not only should you make self-affirmations, and not only should you make them a daily practice, but you should also make self-declarations. And when we think about that word, oftentimes in terms of a magnitude of impact, we think about the Declaration of Independence. And we could all have our own declarations of independence, of defining who we are for ourselves. And oftentimes I would suggest that those statements that are declarations begin with the words like "I will" and "I can," because those define who you are through the actions that you intend to do. It's like every single morning I wake up and I look in the mirror, and I've done this ever since I was 15 years old. It's a lot of days. So every single morning when I look in the mirror, I ask myself this question: what are you willing to do to become who you want to be? What are you willing to do to do what you want done. And that starts my day. Because what follows from that is I will do, I will be, I can do, I can be. And those declarations are support of the affirmations, because you have to have the concept and then the action. The declarations are more of the action, the affirmations more of the concept. You put them together and you can transform who you are.
And I would just add to that there's a couple of references in the book that for an adult audience I think can make more sense. One is the notion of the external mirror, the mirror that we all see, whether it's our phones, whether it's the side of a building, whether it's in the rearview mirror, whether it's in the actual mirror. That mirror is important. It's a vehicle that we see our external qualities, my eyes, my nose, my mouth, my hair, and it's aspects of what it's an expression of us, our looks, and obviously those things are an aspect of who we are. It's not all of who we are, it's one aspect. But the other part about it is the inner mirror anchored around our chest. So I'm pointing to my heart, if you can see, but the relationship that we have with our heart, or the as Michael had mentioned, our spiritual self, is as important as, if not more important than any relationship that there is. And so the opportunity of practicing self-love, eyes closed, with your hands on your heart, and breathing in and looking into that mirror anchored around your heart, and really seeing yourself thrive in this world, seeing yourself succeeding, seeing yourself being accepted and accepting others, seeing yourself as an expression of love and light for others. That inner mirror is a vehicle that we can imagine the world that we want to see, imagine how we operate in that world, essentially practicing the way in which we want that, practicing or setting an intention inside and seeing that intention manifest through our mind's eye. A lot of athletes have I read a story about Michael Phelps, who has talked a lot about the subject of mental health, but he talks about the experience when he won one of his gold medals, and his coach would have him close his eyes and go through the entire race in his head, every lap, every stroke. And the instance to where he actually had to perform for the gold medal, he got water in his goggles and couldn't see. And if it wasn't for that practicing of how he wanted the race to go, then he wouldn't have been able to compete. And it was so ingrained. He knew with such a level of intention and such a level of certainty that he was going to accomplish each and every one of his dreams. He did it. And so I think we too can utilize that inner mirror anchored around our chest as much as we can use the external mirror. And in fact, sometimes, when the external mirror is causing you some trouble, just go to that inner mirror around your heart.
And I would pick up on that before we invite you to offer some comments and questions and feedback. A lot of what we're talking about here, when people have to face themselves in front of a mirror, is an issue of whether or not you can face your own vulnerabilities. And if you can do that and allow yourself to have some comfort with addressing yourself in a vulnerable state, you will realize there's a tremendous amount of strength to be had from doing that. What you'll also realize is this. I define the word trust as a condition of confidence that your vulnerabilities will not be exploited. And so if you have that feeling shared between other individuals, then you have a great bond with those individuals, because you know that they will not exploit your weaker points. You have to have the same kind of bond with yourself, that you will not self-sabotage based upon your vulnerabilities, because you're allowing yourself to become comfortable that you have vulnerabilities. And this is something that's very particularly important for men. Having said that, I want to give everyone one story, but I really invite the men to pay attention to this, given that this is the Mental Health Awareness Month for Men. But everyone can listen to this, benefit from it. When I was 5 years old, I attended a funeral and a wedding back to back. I was a ring bearer at the wedding. The funeral came first. I didn't know the individual who had passed away as a friend of my mother and father, but I realized, I was a very curious kid and always looking around, that everyone was well dressed, But a lot of people were patting each other on the back, consolation, crying, hugging onto one another. And afterwards, at a reception hall, was a repast. The mood was totally different. It was like a great big family reunion. People were laughing and happy. I was confused about that because I knew it was a solemn occasion. Skip ahead a few weeks, in the same church, at a wedding, I'm looking around, I see virtually the same people in the pews, dressed well, patting each other on the back, crying, hugging one another. We go to the reception, look just like the repast. It was this great big family reunion. People are happy and joyous, and I was very confused about that. My mother found me sitting in a corner because I was supposed to be taking photos, part of the bridal party. I was a ring bearer. And she asked me why I was sitting in the corner. And the only thing I could think to ask her as a 5-year-old is, why do people cry? And my mother said, oh, I'll tell you why. If you look out that mirror and look at the grass, tell me what color it is. I said, it's green. She said, if it turns brown, what does it mean? I said, it means it's dead. The grass has died. She said, yes. So why does the grass die? It's because it doesn't get water. She said, right. She said, everything in the world needs water to stay alive. Birds, flowers, squirrels, you. Everything that's alive needs water. Understand? I said, yes. She said, now inside of you is something called a soul. Your soul is what keeps you alive. And every now and then you have to water your soul to stay alive. And tears are water for the soul. That's the reason why we cry when we're happy. That's the reason why we cry when we're sad, because we have to have occasions to bring water to our soul. If we don't, we won't stay alive, we won't feel alive, and we won't continue to grow. That's the most important part about it. We won't continue to grow. So if we are willing to allow ourselves to have the emotions that come with exposing our vulnerabilities, and sometimes those moments bring us with tears, understand that it is through that we're feeling the life that will continue us forward, and we're growing. And that's how the self-love grows within us. So let's embrace those moments when we're standing in front of a mirror. I tell you what, here's a great thing to do. Get in front of a mirror. There's a film called The Greatest Showman, and there's a song in that film that's called This Is Me. Stand in front of a mirror, put some earbuds on, listen to that song, and let's see what kind of moment you have. Because that song always moves me so much that my eyes always water when I hear it. And when I'm done listening to it, I feel like I've grown a bit. So I challenge some of you to do something like that. Find that song, get in front of that mirror, play it, and have that moment of vulnerability with yourself. The tears are there, let them come. I told both my sons, it's the poorest man in the world who doesn't know the value of his own tears.
So Michael brought up a couple of the points. One was the notion of crying. For me, I never cried. I grew up as a boy who, like many boys, are told to be tough. And I wanted to be tough, and my version of being tough was not crying. And I think the trapped emotions, like the aspects of things I didn't deal with over the years, I just didn't realize the necessity to cry, to deal with my emotions, to have a bad day. That's okay. The not okay part is the not talking about it with others and letting that just sit and settle inside of me. I needed to bring it out, and I needed to deal with a lot of that anger and frustration, and understand that under all of that was emotions, was trapped emotions that needed to be let out. And tears is an amazing vehicle to let them out. We need to allow ourselves to heal, and tears and crying can be a vehicle to do that. Otherwise, we're unexpressed emotions, and an unexpressed emotion can cause disease inside of the body. It can cause us to be angry and to express ourselves as angry individuals or unhappy people. So I think first and foremost, the necessity to make the subject of crying and emotions just more acceptable, more approachable is beyond important, which is why we brought Mirror Face into existence. The other thing I'm noticing some of the comments, and just before we tackle specific questions, I do want to bring up one point in that, life throws many challenges at us, and I think the aspect of of why we're being presented that challenge is that it's our reaction to that. Is it happening to us or for us? How can we utilize our toughest moments as a vehicle to find and shift our perspective to the positivity? Why are we dealing with this circumstance, and what can we learn from it? And ultimately, how do we utilize these lessons to grow? How can we utilize this opportunity to be a light for others? How can we continue to bring light into this world, even through our darkest moments? So that's one subject that we can dive in deeper on later. But I do also want to bring up, it looks like we have a comment from Becca, who talks about her own personal experience and how self-affirmations and positive self-talk can feel phony. And to be honest, like it does feel phony for me sometimes too. You have to realize, and Michael can dive deeper on this, but there's lots of aspects of ourself. One is the part of ourself that told us forever that being nice to ourselves was silly and stupid. And so we're confronted with an aspect of ourself when we're doing this. So you have to acknowledge and sometimes being phony with this. There's an incredible book by this woman, Tara Brach, called Radical Acceptance. And she talks about, she refers to that inner voice in her head as Mara. And she has coffee with Mara. She's like, what do you got to talk about today? Like, there's a funny way we can deal with these conversations with ourselves and understand that they're normal, that it's not always supposed to feel like amazing when we're doing it, but it's like working a muscle. And the more we do it, the less phony it feels, because that loud voice in our head quiets down and understands that this is going to be normal. So they better grab a cup of coffee with you and get comfortable doing it with you.
Yeah. And I would add to that, to pick up with Becca about this feeling of sometimes how the affirmations feel, is I would say that when you look at most society, particularly American society, because it is driven by capitalistic consumption, and part of that means that we have been indoctrinated to think that our identity is formed outside of who we are. It's formed by the presentation of who we are. So we think if we look like that billboard, or we look like that magazine ad, or we look like those people in the billboards and magazine ads, then we will assume the persona of those individuals, and that becomes our identity. And there's no greater falsehood than that, because identity is an essence, is within you. And you have to introspect to get it, not look outward to get it. You have to introspect to get it. And if you do that, you will probably receive, if you do it enough, the highest form of knowledge that anyone can have, and that's enlightenment. And if you understand what that word means, it means light brought into. You have to go into yourself to find that. And that's a dark place for many people. But if you're willing to do that, you'll understand that just like the earth, there's an earth within us, a terrain within us. The greatest of riches the earth has to offer oftentimes are underground, the jewels, the fuel for the world. And our great jewels and fuel lie within us. And if we're willing to go inside ourselves to discover that, then you will come in touch with the authentic being, who you really are. And once you come in touch with that person, that individual, that inner voice, there will never again be anything you say to yourself that feels phony, because it will all come from that real spot. So I advise you to do that.
So we, we want to kick this back out to anyone watching who would like to ask a question, and we'll give you a second to think about what your questions are. But in the interim, one piece of the book that we didn't read is called the Mirror Face Challenge. And the reason why we put that into the book, because I think Becca, it touches on your question a bit, is that this mirror practice. Like I've gone to a lot of conferences, I've read the books, and we take ourselves too seriously sometimes. And sometimes when you can utilize a children's book and practice from a children's book, it enables you to connect to that inner you, that inner child that needs the love, that needs the care. That also, remember when we were younger, did we care about, did we judge ourselves in that way? How we talk to ourselves? Did we judge ourselves for being playful and dancing and smiling and laughing? So sometimes we got to tap back into that inner kid in us so that we can allow ourselves to be that essence that we were brought into the world with, before life became more confusing, before the judgment seeped in, before bad things started to happen and reshape our perspectives. So that's what I think Mirror Face does a tremendous job of, is even for adults, is tapping back into that inner you, that inner child, that part of you that you haven't connected to in a while. So before we take some more questions, we don't need to share the Mirror Face challenge, but we're gonna read from it. And Michael, I'll kick it off and you can just take the second paragraph and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Here's something to do, something special for you to learn and to say to yourself every day, so that you can achieve all that you believe and reach for the star that you must learn that you are. Just stand at a mirror and look at your face and let yourself go to your dreaming place and say to the face that is looking at you this little verse, and you'll see something true, something perfectly, totally, marvelously, magically, wonderfully, stupendously, tremendously true, that the face in the mirror will say this to you.
Your greatest dream is to dream about you, whoever you dream to be. And whatever you dream, know this to be true. You can do what you'll do and see what you'll see, and go where you'll go to be who you'll be. You can learn what you learn, trust me, and you'll see. If you believe who you are, you'll become who you dream.
Every child in the world, every boy, every girl, every playmate on playdate who can giggle and twirl, each morning can rise and open their eyes. Or at nighttime instead, when they go off to bed, they can look at a mirror, at the me that they see, and know there's no other me they can be, and recite this rhyme in its lyrical time, and incline themselves to remind themselves to end and begin each day with a grin, and to always dream more, and to never dream less, and to close their eyes with their hands on their chest and hear their hearts tell them, be your best.
And try out your faces to see who you are. When you feel what you're feeling, when you go to your star, make your strong face and bold face and best story told face, and sad face and glad face, your mom and your dad face, and fun face and frown face and being a clown face. And when you feel silly, you're turned upside down face. Now when you're all done, when you're finished and through, say to yourself, hey me, I love you. And go tell your family, your neighbors, your friends. Tell them to try this again and again. Do the Mirror Face Challenge, takes pictures and share, and we hope that you'll show how you look
when you care. So that is the Mirror Face Challenge. And Becca, I think it's a challenge to you as well, and everyone here is to take this opportunity to we're coming off of Mental Health Awareness Month, and what Michael and I were mentioning before is that really every day is Mental Health Day. It's something that should always be nurtured and cared for. And now specifically, it's Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. But there's really no better time than every day making it a Mirror Face Challenge and utilizing that opportunity in the mirror to consciously work on that relationship with yourself, so that throughout the day, you can work on it too, because it doesn't just start. The mirror is just the starting point. It's what we do throughout our day, and how do we enforce positive messages to ourselves, to really using the morning as a vehicle to imagine how we want the world to be, and how we want us to fit within it, imagining positive things happening in our life, imagining us being an expression of light for others, and really utilizing that throughout the day and reminding ourselves that. And then before we go to bed, using that opportunity to participate. But we really want to use this Mirror Face Challenge as a tool to spread love through self-love. A lot of the aspects of Mirror Face were conceived around the subject of how do we take a message like this, like Mirror Face, as a vehicle to make the subject of self-love approachable and acceptable, and how do we get the community reading it and hearing about it to practice it and to spread it. So that's our challenge to you. Practice it and spread it. I think encouraging these discussions, encouraging your discussions with others, and helping others teach self-love through mirrors, which again is the subject of this.
Absolutely. And I would just say one thing for myself that I'd like to leave you with is we've had an incredible year leading in our psyches, our nation were challenged by many difficulties, a pandemic being the least of them, if you consider the social ills that we're all confronting and afflicted with in this country. And it has left many of us in a very low state of self-esteem, low sense of self of who we are. Even I can use the word, many of us are feeling worthless right now. And I would like to suggest that you can counter that. You need to counter that. You can counter that if you understand this one definition I want to leave you with about the word hope. Because for me, hope is an emotional alignment to possibility. Because where you see no possibility, you are hopeless. And hopelessness is cousin to worthlessness. And so they easily move with one another. And you should always try to look within yourself and look in the world around you and those who make up the world around you. The possibility that it is going to be better, that you will become better, and that they will get better. Hold on to that possibility, because the hope that you get from that will lead to the worth that you need to feel.
So the one, I saw a question about Lewis Hayes' mirror workbook, and obviously that's becoming more. Mirror work is becoming more and more in the zeitgeist. We're talking about it more. It's becoming acceptable. To be honest, I haven't yet read it, but I think there's so many different individuals who are talking about the mirror and in bringing practices into our consciousness to help and support a loving and accepting relationship with ourselves. And obviously this is a tremendous book that many have recommended to me, but for me, it's also taking it a step further and bringing some of these messages that have been instructed to adults and teaching it to children too. I think it's beautiful to see a child in their interactions with themselves within the mirror, and now taking it a step further with Mirror Face to help children understand how to practice affirmations, how to say loving things to themselves, how to see themselves from the inside out, and how to express how to express themselves and how to feel courageous enough to express themselves to the world around them. And I think in today's day and age, it's mirror work has never been more important. And we believe this is Mirror Face is such a new way of doing mirror work that takes that gives it some more fun and makes it approachable for no matter if you're 36 or I think Michael's 37, just kidding, or any other age.
And I'd like to try to have us wrap up on a comment that I see from Timothy Freeman Saransky. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. And the comment is, your actual worth never changes since birth. That is a brilliant statement to make, because what happens to us is our valuation of that worth is impacted by the messaging we get from around us, by some of the traumas that we feel. But the worth that we have as human beings is with us from birth. And we can reclaim that worth, and we can retain that value, and we can grow it. So I really want to thank Timothy for adding that comment, because I think it's a brilliant comment. When you come into this world, you have all the platinum, gold, diamond, rubies, emeralds that you'll ever be. And it's immense. That wealth is immense. The worth of who you are is immense. Never let that get devalued. And that's why you need to have that conversation with yourself. Right. You need to go in front of that mirror so that you can always understand what your value is, and you can always properly value who you are.
And the last point that I'd mention on that too is we're each unique expressions. You know, the famous Mr. Rogers quote regarding there's no one like you on this planet. So why do we spend so much time trying to be alike? Why do we try so much time trying to be like others or fitting in? Fit out, get out of the box, you know, be who you are and express that. If you feel like me, like many, operating in a society that feels like we're being forced within the box, you utilize that as an opportunity to get out of the box and to explore aspects of yourself that you've never explored, and realize that that's what we're all searching for. The people that we all look up to and that we all admire to some extent have expressed their authenticity. And I think at the end of the day, that is what we're each individually seeking, our own authenticity, that divine aspect of ourselves, that piece of ourselves that we were brought into existence with. And how do we nurture that and cultivate that, enabling that to always shine through? And to be honest, Becca, I appreciate your words, and you just shared such a nice comment, but it's something that I have to do every day. Sometimes it's quiet, and then it gets louder, and it gets louder, and then I feel, it's an energy, and that energy sometimes feels low, and it can be brought, and it can be manifested, it can be cultivated, and it can now all of a sudden be exemplified. And now I think that that's how I see myself in this world, is that some days are bad days, but the more that I can nurture and cultivate this relationship with myself, the more that I can check in with myself, see what's going on, the more that I can continue to practice the relationship that I have with myself, and practice that love, and then start to express that love to the world around me, the more fuel it gives. So I encourage each of you to utilize this as a practice, and to enable each of us to see the light in you that we probably already see, but that you feel to some extent that you need to dampen or weaken. Now's our time to shine that light, and it starts with shining that light within, and allowing us to connect to it first and foremost, so that we can shine it to others.
And with that, we want to give a great big thanks for being hosted here today. And for all of you who joined us today and have made your comments today, you can check out the website links that are being mentioned on screen. And we hope to be with you again. And we want to see that light out there. So go shine.
So please check out Mirror Face. Check out Michael Tyler's site as well. I Love You Mirror Face is the affirmation from the book, and an easy way to remember where to go to buy it. And please spread this video with whomever you think needs this message. As I mentioned from before, another form of self-love is telling others about it, because it's a trick that each of us have within. And the more people we can teach everyone about this simple trick, the more that we can start each practicing it, encouraging others to practice it. And then the more loving we are to themselves, the more loving we will be able to be to one another. So it's an important lesson, and we appreciate you taking the time to enable us to share this with you.
Many thanks.